Hi, I'm Daryl Arnold with Fleetistics, and we are here today with Jerome from Predictive Coach. Jerome is going to take a few moments to outline his product and company to us. Thank you for joining us today. Good morning, Jerome. Welcome. Could you take a few minutes to tell us about your product line and company?
Yeah, sure. It'd be my pleasure to do so. And Daryl, thanks so much for having me here. It's quite a studio you guys have here, and it's an honor to be here in beautiful Florida with Fleetistics. Talking about Predictive Coach is a great pleasure for me. It is a product that we created and launched at the beginning of this year in 2017. And the primary purpose of it is to provide automated and relevant driver training to the fleet space via the different telematics providers that you and I are both familiar with.
How can Predictive Coach's product improve safety and performance for fleet managers?
Yeah, so it's really neat. What we've done is we've designed the product so that way we can take the behavior from the different telematics devices, or a mobile device, if you will, and we look at speed and hard braking and all those different types of things, and we marry that in our database with proprietary driver training that we created. That then gets sent out to the actual driver so that they can have training that's relevant to the behavior that we need to address. And that's a big deal because currently most companies have maybe a driver training program where it's a generic training. Everybody takes the same thing, but the fact of the matter is no two drivers are the same because our personality types are different. So we should have training that's relevant to us. And if you're like me, I really haven't paid a lot of attention to my driving over the time since I took my driver's license, which was a couple years ago. And I've created habits that I don't even realize I have. And if you have a GPS device in your car and you pay attention, or if you have our training, you're going to see that you develop some habits that are quite dangerous actually to yourself and to those around you driving on the road.
Could you please tell us about your company? How old is it? Where are you located?
Sure, it's my pleasure. So we're based out of California, and the company itself, RMJ Technologies, is basically the parent company. We've been around for a decade now. We incorporated in 2006 and have been in the fleet space all that time. So we know what fleets need. Predictive Coach was developed specifically from listening to the needs of our customers. We've entered an area of liability that is new, meaning that going back 7 years ago, an organization, they didn't have GPS tracking, and attorneys suggested that they get it. So that way, if something happened, they could prove that it wasn't their vehicle at that location, or they weren't really going as fast as they were being accused of. But then the amount of data that they were receiving from the telematics providers became so overwhelming that managers simply ignored the information. Now those organizations are getting sued because they have all of this information, they're not acting on it, and then one of their drivers gets into a major accident, hopefully not, but perhaps a fatality. And when that happens, the data is now being subpoenaed, and they're actually being exposed that they had the data, did not act on that data, and now are liable, more so than if they never had the GPS technology to begin with.
Help us to understand who your customer base is. Who can benefit the most from your product?
Sure. That's a great question, and I know even in the GPS space we always get that question: who can benefit from this and who can't? So it really doesn't matter if it's a public sector company, a private sector. Quite frankly, it doesn't matter if you have 5 vehicles or 5,000, because all of us, again, are dealing with driver behavior. We're dealing with liability. We're dealing with the lives of the people that we love and care about on the road. So all of us can become safer drivers, and this is one way to automate that, so it takes the onus off of managers. So if you're an HVAC company, you can worry about your HVAC business. You're not a transportation company. You need not really be worrying about how someone is driving. So this kind of keeps everyone in check on an automated basis and allows managers to do the jobs they were hired for initially.
Could you give us an idea of some of the current customers for the product?
Yeah, so we have a number of folks that are looking at this right now, and we, again, launched it just a few months back. So we have some great eyes that are looking at this, but the people that we're talking to, and that's both in the private sector and in the public sector, we fortunately have a good database of our customers that we were able to talk to. It's been a no-brainer. They're thinking, it kind of seems like one of those things that you wonder, why hasn't this always existed? And they're very excited about the possibilities, and we're very excited about its implementation that we have today, and then the ongoing plans and future plans that we have for Predictive Coach.
Could you give us an idea of what the process is to evaluate and basically just decide if your product is appropriate for a customer's business?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's kind of neat. All we're looking at, and we designed this to be very basic and very simple, is the number of times that a driver will surpass exceptions that were established by the organization. Once they hit that number, they're going to be assigned to training. So there's a couple things that we can look at. We can look at the number of exceptions and expect to see a decrease. And then we can go ahead and fortunately, we can look at concrete numbers associated with the number of accidents occurred within a fleet and also the body damage to vehicles within a given fleet. Just those two figures alone, which obviously are very important, can give us a very good indication of a decrease in poor behavior.
What impact has Predictive Coach had on current customer operations?
Well, it's just made things a lot easier. This is a manager-facing solution. So managers are better able to deal with their own customers, their own end user, if you will, and at the same time, it allows them to manage and have better relationships with their drivers. We have a lot of cameras out there on vehicles. We have a lot of telematics devices on vehicles, and there's always been that big brother feel. This kind of pulls a lot of that away because we're just trying to help people become better drivers. So if they're in a company vehicle or they're in their personal vehicle, we really feel that we're going to have safer drivers on the road. And as a result, as a manager, I don't have to bring you into my office and say, I have this report and I really need you to drive better than you are. And you and I have been friends for 25 years and it's an awkward conversation. It's a lot easier if you just happen to get an email that says, hey, you kind of exceeded the number of infractions that you are permitted, and now you have this training that's specifically relevant to your driving behavior. I, the manager, get copied with that information, as does human resources or risk management. So it makes their jobs a lot easier as well because now things are documented and I didn't have to have you come into my office to have that uncomfortable situation.
Could you help us understand how your product works with the rules in the Geotab system?
Sure. So what we're doing with Geotab is we're integrated, as you mentioned, within their solution. And a customer simply needs to add that to their array of products that they're using within Geotab. Then it simply becomes a tab on their interface when they log in Geotab as they normally would. And then they simply will set the exceptions under that tab. There'll be a few things, reports, exceptions in the dashboard. They set the exceptions to what they're looking for based on the behavior. And then we pick up those exceptions into our database. We pull those in, and then we marry to those the relevant training that would deter or to mitigate that particular behavior that we want to go ahead and fix. The training gets pushed out electronically, and then on the interface for the customer, they simply see that the training was assigned and whether or not it's past due or current.
What are the future plans for the product?
Well, there are several, right? So one of them is to go ahead and establish a number of different exceptions, a little bit more control for the customer than exists today. The other is to add additional behaviors. So right now we have the basic behaviors from seatbelt, speed, hard braking, those types of things. But we have some other exceptions in mind that we want to add to provide even more use for the customer themselves. And then as we go forward on the training content that we've developed, we're really excited about really developing some really cool training content that we know that the industry could really use, and we're excited about being able to bring that to the public.
Could you give us an idea of the process that you and your team went through during product development? How did you choose the talent? How did you go about deciding how the product was going to be produced?
Sure. So being a fleet company for 10 years, we knew the fleet space. So I had a pretty good idea of what our end users would want. Again, that's why we created Predictive Coach, because we listened to the customers. I actually had a number of different meetings where I pull in existing customers and we talked about it. What would you like to see? What are the critical things? What would we need to come out with first to make it a viable product that they would purchase? And that we covered on the fleet side. So then I had to bring in expertise on training because we didn't have that. We knew training existed. I looked at a lot of it and wasn't really moved by much of it. I felt kind of old, if you will. So I brought in some folks that were doing some work on more cutting edge driver training, brought them, we worked with them as contractors on this specific project, and we continue to work with them on an ongoing basis for what we want to push in the future. So it was a collaborative effort from experts in the field and then our expertise in fleet.
What would you like our audience to know about your product and service that we haven't discussed already?
I just think the ease of use. If you think of how we do things today and the benefits of telematics, we've been I want to say almost together in this for a long time now, and we've helped a lot of organizations by none. There's been times you have stories, I have stories, and some of the best stories is when we would have a users conference and we let the customers tell stories. Those you want to write down if they gave you permission to do so. And those are, it's unbelievable what people do and how they think this stuff doesn't work. And then they realize, unfortunately, that it does work for them, unfortunately for them. And the information that you get is incredible. So in order for us to really help our customers go further, take that next step, take the onus off of them for managing areas that they're not hired to do, which is, unless you're in transportation, deal with driver training. Be able to work with counterparts within their organization in risk management, in other areas, so they don't have to be so divisive in their effort. They can actually be collaborative in their effort. They can go ahead and bring and use this technology, save money on budgets. They're spending money in driver training already, but they have to assign those individually, or someone has to go in and assign training for a specific person. We marry those and we just make it, that's what I guess our life is with technology, and even doing this video today. We make it easy to get the word out. In this case, they're going to be making it easy to get the training out. But the key thing that we do with Predictive Coach is when people are looking at how do I be more safe, they're looking at scorecards. They're looking at gamification, all kinds of fantastic things, all kinds of great new technology that's available. But even when you look at a scorecard, you're going to have people that don't score an A, or they're not at whatever that high number is. So what do? You don't cast them out. You can't just ignore them. That's the major, then you will find yourself in a lawsuit. You cannot ignore them. And I always say, it's kind of like me. If my son is getting a C and I want him to have an A, and he brings the scorecard home, the report card, I am now going to look at additional tutoring, spending more time working with him, reading, math, whatever the case is. I'm going to help him improve. And all of our educational lives, that's what we've done. We've increased the training in the relevant area so that we can perform better, and that's exactly what we're doing here, and that's exactly what our customers will be able to do for their employees that drive.
That concludes our interview today. Be sure to like our video, tag it for your friends, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, please submit them below and we will get back to you. Or visit us on the web at www.fleetistics.com. Thank you very much for joining us today.